Okay, we're here. And we have a group in person, a big group in person, and we also have all you online. And hi, Marina Bay neighbors. I hope you can all see and hear us, okay?
Trying to mute this right here.
That's okay. That should, no, you don't have to push anything. It's fine.
Yes.
So we're going to we're hosting this evening for Marina Bay Community Emergency Preparedness. This session is with Richard Diaz, who's the Emergency Services Manager with the Richmond Fire Department, and Aaron Osorio, who's our Fire Chief. So we're very excited to have you here.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
And yeah, they have a PowerPoint, and at the end of each segment, they'll ask for questions. And so if you would raise your hands either in person or via the internet little icon over there, they will try to take your questions as possible. At the end, there should be time for more questions as well. And also, we will be recording this. And before we start, I'd also like to thank Karen and Jay Fenton, who haven't showed up yet, but they have been such big supporters of all of our Marina Bay emergency preparedness trainings and getting our antennas in here, all the tall antennas, and doing a lot of that. But let's see who's coming now. Nope, not him. Anyway, so also Marina Bay Neighborhood Council is appreciated as our local forum for any city issues and often participate. So moving on, our event, thanks to Council Member Sohail Bana, who I met during ham radio training, for connecting me with Richard. And I will just let you take it from here, Richard. Thanks.
Thank you, Diane. And thank you to the community for hosting us here at the Marina, the Shores HOA. We're delighted with Fire Chief Osorio to be here and just talk to you. This is more of a informal conversation about community preparedness for the Marina Bay community. I know this webinar is also open for others who may be interested in knowing more about local hazards and also to pose questions. So very happy to address them as they come. So again, I'm Richard Diaz, OES manager.
Good evening, everybody. Aaron Osorio, newly appointed fire chief in October. Have been with the organization though for 22 years, so I'm very familiar with Richmond. Came up through the ranks. Very familiar with all of the areas in the neighborhoods in Richmond, and served in almost every single firehouse in the city. So I have a very deep knowledge of the different areas and the different risks in different areas of the city. So thanks for having us.
Great.
Thank you, Chief. So we'll go ahead and proceed with the slides. Again, it's very informational, very short, probably for some, probably long for others, but we'll see. And again, the whole point is to share information and make the space for you to ask some questions. Okay, so a quick session overview. I'll provide you with what the OES structure is all about, what my role pretty much focuses on in the focus area, and mainly the local hazards here in Marina Bay. Many of you are already aware of it, but I think it's good to share those things and reiterate what are those hazards and preparedness measures that you should have in place. We'll focus too on tsunamis and evacuation. Those two go hand in hand, particularly because of what we all experienced that one December 5th, 2024. So we'll tie into that. And then eventually I do want to share some preparedness resources. For those that are here, I do have some materials in the back. Feel free to grab them. They're flyers or printouts, and also I'll share some links to additional resources online. And ultimately a questions and answers session. So again, for those online, we'll be monitoring the screen for any hands raised or questions posed on the Q&A feature.
Chat.
And chat. Thank you. So briefly, our OES structure, I apologize. It's this because I think you as a community need to understand what emergency services is and how it functions within the wider umbrella of the fire department. So what you see here is the very basics, bare bone, led by Fire Chief Osorio, who's here next to me. We also have a deputy fire chief, and then several divisions. So myself reporting to Chief Fireman Osorio, you'll see there in dotted red line, emergency services as a standalone division. We also have fire prevention as a standalone division and administration. Another division on the right is our training division or department, and also emergency operations, which is, I guess, the bulk of our department operations with dispatch calls, resources, and everything that comes with that. Okay, so my role as OES manager, and I think, within the breadth and expansion of what it could do, I think I'm gonna focus it on what really matters. So several things. I am in charge and responsible for city preparedness and response. So what that means is there is a level of response from within the city whenever something happens. And that involves training staff. You see the picture there on the top right, that is a picture of the EOC, not our EOC. So I am in charge of ensuring that it is on readiness mode. That involves training our city staff to also support, because when we activate, we as disaster service workers need to occupy a role in that. And we have designated roles within the city, and that is something that needs to be always practiced and be on readiness mode. In terms of response, that is also having plans in place, revising them regularly in tandem with the county and the state. So in general, that's what I like to call internal preparedness. Second focus area is the outside world, which is what I'm doing here, is the community preparedness. That is engaging with the community, providing training with our signature program. As you all know, it's the CERT, Community Emergency Response Team, and others, providing these public educational sessions, but also advocating. Obviously, as you know, we are surrounded by the industry, so trying to understand that there's that component as well, that we need to work in cooperation on behalf of the community. Strategic partner coordination, that is critical also in my role. For example, with Chevron, we need to have that partnership. We have trainings together, exercises together. There are other critical partners here within City of Richmond jurisdiction, the businesses. We have employees that come here to just spend the day and leave. So when something happens within that shift of their time, we are responsible for that. And also critical partners like the West Contra Costa Unified School District, given the several schools that we have in place. Nonprofit organizations, SOS Richmond, for instance, Red Cross, etc. So it's a very strategic approach to having that in place. And lastly, grant acquisition. We do depend and rely on certain grants, either from the state or the government, even some foundations. But this is something that is actively looking for and securing. The city does have its own budget, but this is the norm with every emergency management program, to always be on the lookout and take advantage of those grants. One of them is, for instance, FEMA's grant through the local hazard mitigation plan, which once we develop it, then it gives us an opportunity to seek other funding through the federal system. Okay, so narrowing it down to what we're here, and these are the questions that I want to make sure that we address and let you guys understand. And it's what are those hazards here in Marina Bay? Where are they? I know a lot of it actually impacts not only Marina Bay but all of the city. But specifically, what is it that you as shoreline community should be aware of? What are those community impacts? And to have you guys ask the question or ask yourselves a question: are you prepared? Are you prepared to address them? Are you prepared to respond? Are you prepared to simply understand the level of what we're talking about? So let's get to it, and I'll as I go through these slides, I took advantage of ensuring that you guys understand what the sources are from. In local government, we rely a lot on official sources. It's working, be it from the state, federal government, and even regional partnerships. This is a map that it's a snapshot, obviously, of a website tool. It's a hazardous lookup tool. It was developed by CalOE as the California Office of Emergency Services, and it's simply a way to ensure people understand what are their hazards within their area. So that red dot, when you go to this website, it allows you to type in your address or any feature within your residential area. I typed in the Shores HOA address, One Shoreline Court. It pinpointed, and what it will give you is a map highlighting all the hazards that are around you. I know you probably can see and tell which ones are already known. I'll start from right to left. It's the red section. It's the wildfire hazard risk area, and this is again a snapshot. It's a wider map once you go to the website. The purple stripe is obviously the Hayward Fault, and then here what actually impacts the shoreline, it looks like a mesh area. That is the tsunami prone area, and we'll talk more about that. But again, a very interesting tool. It's still up to date. And again, just a quick way, if you ask the question, well, what hazards are around me? What would impact me if you look at it from your own address point of view? So we'll start with, I want to make sure we address wildfire. I know it's something that has been, in the minds of many, given particularly what happened with the LA fires. But let's start with that now, go down the other hazards. So this is the wildfire hazard area for Richmond. It's the very high fire hazard severity zone. It's a snapshot taken from a GIS map from the city. And as you can see, those are the defined, the pink shaded areas are the defined very high fire hazard severity zone. Obviously, Marina Bay is not within scope. However, it's the question and worry and concern of, will I be impacted? And that is something that we can, we'll provide more details on. But in essence, this is what you should be aware of, at least in Marina Bay. The concern and worry of vegetation management isn't really a priority compared to the other areas that are more in the WUI, wildland urban interface, which comes with several other methods of preparedness. You might have heard from either reading articles and also from the West Contra Costa Fire Safe Council. We recently developed a document called Local Hazard Mitigation Plan that was done in tandem with the county, with Contra Costa County. And that plan is basically, it's not a response plan. We call it Local Hazard Mitigation Plan because it's meant to be revised every 5 years. We recently completed it. What it does is it does an assessment of what are the hazards in your jurisdiction. For Richmond, it isn't public yet. It needs to be adopted, and we're working on that. That is part of the process of every local hazard mitigation plan in every jurisdiction. We have a draft plan. It's approved by FEMA and CalOE, and then local jurisdictions we adopt it. Once it's adopted, it's implemented.
Real quick, Richard,
Yes.
just so everybody knows, what does it mean to adopt it? Who adopts it?
Thank you. So adopting means making it official. So it goes through city council.
So it's not just us as a fire department saying we accept it, has to be put on the council agenda. We have to make a presentation, what it is, and then the council has to adopt it as the governing board of the city. That yes, we accept that this is our plan. So that, just make sure everybody understands what it means to adopt.
How long does that usually take?
When we get the green light to get it on the agenda item, it has to go to the normal city council meeting agenda process, so it has to go for legal review. Has to go through a bunch of workflow, but usually that from when you put it in, it can take about 3 to 4 weeks to get it on the agenda. So when we get the green light to put it on the agenda for review, we'll start that process. It doesn't take too long.
Is that opposition? Should we help you guys out?
Is there opposition, did you say?
Yeah.
I don't see why anybody would oppose it. The local hazard mitigation plan, what it really does is open up the opportunity for the city to apply for grants that help mitigate the hazards we identified in there. They're meant to be man-made hazards, is what it traditionally is supposed to have. We have incorporated some, natural hazards. We have incorporated some man-made hazards in there. But the local hazard mitigation plan has always been a method of identifying natural hazards and risks: flooding, wildfire, earthquake, tsunami, sea level rise. And then if you don't have a plan improved and adopted by your governing agency, you can apply for certain types of grants that might fund projects that deal with those issues, like vegetation management, sea level rise mitigation plan. So it's really showing the federal government and the state OES that we have gone through a process to come up with like an actual assessment of what our hazards are. And then it opens up this opportunities for you. So I don't see why there would be a reason for anybody to oppose it, because it's really would be opposing future grant funding opportunities.
That's great.
Do we have a local hazard issue with EV battery production like they had down in the southern part of the state?
No, because I think the facility that was going to be doing that is no longer moving forward with their project. I think down in the marina at the harbor.
Right.
So as far as mass production, I'm not aware. There is some at the mall site, there is some autonomous vehicle. I think that has to do with electric vehicles. There is some lithium battery use up there, but it's not necessarily a production. It's more research and development.
Okay, so the one they had planned by Rosie the River was kaput.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, Moxian.
Moxian is no
They're
longer.
Yeah.
Good question. Forgot about that.
Thank you. And I want to pause here, address a couple of questions that have popped up here. I'll start with I guess a technical one. So the My Hazards Cal OES website, it might be probably an S that you missed, but try Googling My Hazards Cal OES and that will take you to the actual website. It should be live and working. And there's another question here in terms of Marina Bay residents. Do we need to prepare for wildfire in terms of having 5 feet of defensible space around structures?
Well, this is not in the wildfire zone. This is not the primary risk here. I wouldn't even say that it is in the top 3 risks in your specific location here. When you say what would be impacted, I think that is a little bit of a subjective term. I think you could have a significant wildfire in the zone and you could have health impacts from smoke, from being displaced because of, traffic, and there's impacts. So it's not that there would be 0 impacts. It is not the primary threat to your residents and your homes in this community. And so I would say that that's not where you should be putting all of your effort in. I think that I know that through just normal fire fighting issues and tactics and things that we see, having overgrowth around any home is a threat, even if you're not in the wildland area. If you have a neighbor that has a residential structure fire and you have overgrowth, it could easily spread. So, we do recommend maintenance of vegetation. Because you don't have to be in a wildfire zone to have some vegetation cause damage to your house. But as a wildfire component, it is not the primary risk, or, like I said, not even in the top 3 in this specific neighborhood in the city.
Thank you, Chief. There's, I'm gonna let Janice, I see your hand up, so I'll allow you to talk. Go ahead.
Thank you. I took off my keyboard, so I can't type up my questions and you're raised up. Do you see the area that runs adjacent to the 580 and the bay, right, the bridge, the Richmond San Rafael Bridge? Is that a slide area, or what is that on the left side? Because I can't quite read your code, but it looks like it might be landslide susceptibility. Is that correct? Under 580 and under the bridge?
That is correct, Janice, thank you. And I apologize if it shows a little bit too small for your screen, but this is the landslide susceptibility hazard map.
So if we were trying, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if we were trying to evacuate, it looks like going over the bridge, I mean, if we're in a water flooding area, going over the bridge wouldn't be our best choice. Is that correct?
Bridge is elevated.
Yeah, the bridge is elevated, but
Well, if everything happens at once.
It's depends where the slide is. I mean, that's kind of with all these hazards. That's why
Yeah.
we dictated one single evacuation route. Evacuation routes are highly dynamic, and they're based upon whatever the hazard is at the time, right? So a landslide might cut off access on Dornan to get through the tunnel if you're in the point, if you want to come around canal side. If you are at certain places in Point Richmond, there's certain streets you might not be able to access. So it really depends on what is the event. And that's why we don't tell people this is your neighborhood's shelter place, this is your neighborhood's evacuation route, because the moment we lock you into one way, we lose the ability to change and say, oh, no, this is being impacted now. We need you to go this way instead. So we want people to know multiple ways out of their area. We do realize that industry has created some issues in trying to get through some of these egress routes certain times a day. We've been trying to work with them on that. There are some railroad crossings that are problematic that we've had to think about in the event of evacuations. How would we address those? We are in communication with the local railroads to try to stop traffic at times we need to have access. But it is a kind of a complex dynamic issue that we always think about when we're talking about evacuations and getting people out of neighborhoods.
Since we're on evacuations now, I mean, if we are trying to find out what the best evacuation route is, and let's say cell towers are down, we could use our radio here, we have the tall antenna, and we can get on with other local people and hopefully find out, or we'll get a Nixle update. What's the best way to get that information?
I think at the very end, there are 3 slides that have things we want you to sign up for, so we'll cover that. But we also want people to understand that knowing their evacuation zones, there will be redundancy in any sort of evacuation orders. Besides Nixle, the CWS system would be activated, and that accesses numerous ways to get in touch with folks, even if the cell system is down. There's reverse 911, there's the WIA system, there's cell towers, there's the radio system, and there's the TV. So there's multiple methods that system will try to get in touch with individuals. But I think at the end, there's a couple slides that cover the different notification methods, and then we can that might answer some of the questions, and then we can answer the rest after that. Will that work?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. And as mentioned, we'll be sharing those preparedness resources, and one of them is how to get those notifications. And I see other hands. I will come back to you shortly, but let me just answer couple questions here from Margarita. In terms of the hazard mitigation plan, yes, it is a reassessment of the hazard, so it will include sea level rise and also tsunami. And no, it is not, it does not go to FEMA. Actually, it came back from FEMA. So the process is, we develop it with the county. It gets sent to the state and FEMA. FEMA approves it, and then it comes back down to us. And that is then the last step of having it adopted.
What about the family's gone? Ben?
Personal thing.
Whole other meeting, that's a whole other meeting.
That's another podcast.
It is.
Can I ask you
Okay.
to go one slide back? I just wanted to check the website.
Yes.
The OES website?
Yeah. Okay. I
Right.
think it is California government, non-government California.
.gov.ca.
It should be CA.
Oh, just CA. Oh,
CA.gov.
CA.gov.
so that's what it is. Thank you. See, this is great. Thank you. So I will correct that. So yes. So as I mentioned, landslide susceptibility. And that will be one of the hazard maps available on the hazard mitigation plan once it's officially made public. Okay, so this is another snapshot that is included in the hazard mitigation plan is a potential sea level rise. That is throughout all of Richmond in a dark blue area. Obviously, you'll see a little bit down there to the south where we are. There is some impact, and I'm actually, the next slide will be a little bit of close-up of Marina Bay. And again, this is just a snapshot. I'll provide you with some information of where to go and have these better mapping interface that you can zoom in and out. But and you will see too, depending on the number of years, there's models for 50 years, for 100 years, whereas the potential or predicted impacts of a sea level rise, but it does impact certain areas of the SF shoreline. Okay, and this is, we've all read about it. It's our liquefaction susceptibility area. This is a map taken from the California Department of Conservation, the Geographic Survey Division. So it's the green covered area that is liquefaction. For those liquefaction, as you know, it's that saturated soil that could become an issue in case of an earthquake. It prompts to significant damage of structures, etc. So we have a lot of that.
Whole city almost.
Wow.
In the area.
Yeah, wow.
Correct.
Not just Marina Bay.
Not just Marina Bay.
And that's because why? It was just the soil, the way the soil is.
Some is due to landfill over the years,
Right.
largely, it's usually due to that.
Okay.
Also just the soil makeup in the city. I don't know if you realize the water table is extremely shallow in the city of Richmond, in the downtown area. All of those factors play into the liquefaction.
Thank you.
And is it because we're located right on the coast that has that a lot to do with that? As well?
Yeah, I think the makeup of the soil is impacted by our location in relation to the water.
Right, that's wrong.
Yeah.
I see a hand from Brian, right? Brian, I've unmuted you. You can proceed with a question or comment.
I did not mean to raise my hand. I apologize.
Okay. Thank you. I do see Jackie with your hand up.
Yes, thank you. My question is on liquefaction. I live in Marina Bay North Shore, and we were built on pilings that go down to bedrock. So what is our hazard if we're on bedrock, but everywhere else around us has liquefied? Are we high and dry? Can we evacuate? Should that happen?
Well, it sounds like your structure will be okay. You know,
But it doesn't look like there's any evacuation routes.
Well, you gotta remember, this is a risk in those areas. It doesn't mean the whole area will go like that. It depends on the magnitude of the earthquake and the epicenter and all those types of things.
Okay,
So I think that what this map's really supposed to be trying to inform people of is the liquefaction can cause structural damage and collapse. And so being aware of that, obviously, if you don't have to evacuate, we don't want people to have to be displaced. I think it's going to depend on the scenario and the circumstances of the earthquake. But the fact that the structural integrity of your home is good, it might be the best place to stay. But we would expect the roads, although to be damaged potentially, would still be roads that still be passable. This is more about knowing about your structure and how it's going to possibly be impacted.
okay, so this is where vulnerable structures could suddenly find themselves crumbling or toppling.
Correct.
sideways.
Think of it like the Marina District in San Francisco.
Okay,
If you have a soft story, first story, depending on the type of building, it might be more susceptible to damage because you're in this green zone.
yeah. Okay, thank you.
Can I ask a quick question? You've got a bunch of areas just to the west of the Hayward Fault there that look like big lakes. What is that? I mean, that's
The blue area?
The blue area.
Things that look like they're water.
Yeah, well, here it says massive landslides fault location on Surrey. So this is, as I mentioned, the Hayward Fault. There is risk of landslide given this higher elevation as we go deeper in. That is what that means. The blue, I actually don't know what that color is, but it's
Is that the fault line itself?
This
that you
is
showed earlier.
exactly. This is all the fault line. It's following through again.
Yeah.
It actually says here Hayward Fault. And for those that are interested, I mean, this presentation can also be shared later on, and it is recorded for those that didn't hear the beginning. But that is the risk. Closer to the fault in elevations, very likely we'll see that type of movement of soil.
And that would be susceptible to landslides because of how steep the.
Oh, no, I
the grade
understand
is
that.
there.
It looks like the land of 1,000 lakes too.
Oh, no, those are just zones, different types of landslide zones. There's not much water up in the hills.
So liquefaction is when the soil behaves as liquid and settles down in a strong earthquake. So is that what we should be kind of expecting if there is a major earthquake?
That's what causes the structural collapse and the structural damage is your foundation is, if it wasn't put on pilings, it's gonna start to shift and you're gonna have substantial damage to your home maybe. Or if you have soft story where you have like a garage on the first floor, doesn't have a lot of shear wall protection, those are susceptible to shifting and collapsing because the soil is going to move a lot more and you're going to have a lot more movement in your structure.
Is there anything that we can do to prevent or minimize or mitigate the risk of catastrophic damage due to the liquefaction?
There's only so much you can do as far as shear wall and earthquake bracing. It's very expensive. It really is going to come down to the foundation and your structure. If your foundation isn't have the capacity to withstand that, all of the other things you do aren't going to have a lot of an impact on that. So I think it's going to depend on your age of your structure, how old it is, what type of structure, how many stories it is.
And how big a quake it is.
How big of an earthquake? Like I said, the risk hazard assessment and these hazards are extremely dynamic topic.
Yeah.
Because there's so many variables in these scenarios.
Thank you. And I'll take one more question online, and then I'll come back to Jay. One second, Jay. I see Martin West. Go ahead if you have a question.
Yeah, it's more of a comment. I maybe 3 or 4 years ago did a presentation on liquefaction in Marina Bay. This map information was not available at the time. They'd only finished Alameda County. But if you look at the detailed map or detailed report for Contra Costa County, this green says everything is subject to liquefaction. And in some degree that's true, but they break down the different areas and there's a much more detailed map, and it says it's much worse it's worse in some places than in other places. Unfortunately, Marina Bay is one of the worst places, but I suggest you find that report, and I can send it to you. I have a copy of it, and maybe think about making a little more detailed map, because this is kind of frightening to people. The report doesn't suggest that everything is equal in all this green area. That's my comment.
Thank you, Martin, and correct. I mean, it's more of a technical report will give you more details. And again, this is just as an awareness type of projection. And I'll come back, Jay, with a question.
Just a comment. There are no soft stories in anywhere in Marina Bay. Okay, so everything was built to the standard current at the time of building. Those standards, of course, change every time there's a major earthquake. The engineers get out and rewrite everything. And what they thought was going to be secure, all of a sudden wasn't secure. So they come back and tune it up. And, the problem with the soil here was pretty well compacted, quite a bit different than Marina Bay, which was built on sand. And I don't think there was any compaction there. They just built up sand and built on top of it. Touring the marina area in San Francisco after the earthquake, you could see where sand just blew through the cracks in the sidewalk. We won't have that here, but the one thing is though that we're basically built on gelatin. I mean, it's like sitting out on a bowl of jelly, and so the impact will be accelerated. Or enhanced.
The movement.
If you're sitting on bedrock, you may not even feel it. If you're sitting on gelatin, you're going to feel a lot more of it. I think the houses will all stand. I think that there'll be cases where buildings will rack, doors will jam. People might get stuck in them and need to be extracted by prying the doors open. I think the utilities are going to take a big hit. We've already had one water line that failed just outside this building, in fact, down at the Rosie, where it meets the Rosie, well, next to home over where it meets most of the river. So I do think that the gas lines, the sewer lines, the water lines, not so much the electrical lines, but those will all be impacted. And so there's going to be a period of time where sewage isn't going to work, water's not coming in. And the like, and that's what I expect to see here.
That's a great comment.
And obviously it's really depending on the magnitude as well, but it's good to know. One quick question: when was this area built?
1980.
80.
Cove and North Shore were the first developments. When were they constructed?
80s.
Early 80s.
Okay.
Noma's the most recent.
Yeah, it's all in the last 40 years.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. Janice, I see your hand up. Not sure if that was from before, or do you have another question? Okay, I will lower hand. Okay, moving on to the next slide. And this is touching up upon various hazards. So this is flood. Taken from the California Department of Water Resources, DWR. Might be confusing, but the dark shaded blue area, it's the flood hazard area. And again, this is just zoomed into to this area here, which includes Marina Bay. Not much of an impact once zoomed in. You will see, so let me pinpoint here. There are some streets does creep in a little bit on some streets, especially see here as it gets close to the 580 on the southwestern side, including here going up the Santa Fe Channel, a little bit here. So these are all based on models. And again, it's from California Department of Water Resources, and it's just a good platform to go in and understand what are the potential of a major flood.
That would be caused by a high tide or a tsunami of some sort, or no?
That's no.
So the bay,
Or heavy rain.
the bay would flood? Or
It could very likely heavy rain or excessive rain. Not really much tsunami. Tsunami does play into the model of the flooding map, but it's mainly for excessive rain. I have several slides here concerning the upcoming rain forecasted for this week.
Okay.
But yes. And this is zoomed in a little bit more. And this takes us into what is referred to as a 100-year flood. You've probably heard about that. And all that means is it's just simply a 1% chance of that massive flood occurring in any given year. So this is Marina Bay community, and you do see here all the same stuff. And again, it's referred to a 100-year flood. It's a 1% chance of occurring any given year. Now, like the following graphics, which I'm going to show you next, it breaks it down to better understand it.
That's Meeker Slough that's going back over there. So that's normal that it has water in it. I'm just wondering, where does the water actually overlay the land?
It's actually under
The marsh.
marsh area, to be honest with you.
It's marsh.
Yeah, it's
just a
marsh area,
marsh.
yeah.
And then along the
That's why we
perimeter.
have the wetlands.
We're impacted more by tidal flow than we are by flood, you know, just given our location on the bay, or your guys' location here on the bay.
Uh-huh. So no direct flooding?
No, not like, yeah, not like widespread residential. I mean, this is areas that are low-lying areas that are walking trails.
Right.
East Bay Park's property, most of this.
Cuts us off or not from the rest of the area?
No.
No, it shouldn't.
No,
Good.
that's just a slough.
I see a question from Ralph. Go ahead, Ralph.
Regarding the flooding, I stood at the king tide at 10 o'clock at the bridge at the creek there that we're looking at now, Meeker, and that water, as you see it, that was pretty much the way it looked at the king tide at 10 o'clock on December 14th. I did this part of the king tide projects, which are predicting sea level rise, and really by not just prediction, but by actual documenting in regarding the water level and an identifiable object. So for instance, the bridge is a very identifiable object in the photographs that I took. I'm wondering about the liquefaction. I mean, other than, isn't it interesting that we're sitting on a liquefaction zone? There's really nothing that you can do to protect yourself against a liquefying earthquake, is there?
No.
Not really.
Not really.
Yeah, okay.
Hate to be doom and gloom, but
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Okay, continuing on. So this is more of an explanatory graphics that helps understand this 100-year flood situation. So to break it down, there's a 26% chance of your home flooding at least once over a 30-year mortgage. That's another way of interpreting it. So there's a 30-year mortgage of your house, there's 26% chance of it occurring. Also, 55% chance during the average lifetime of it occurring. And lastly, 14% chance of your home floods twice over your average lifetime. So this is another way of seeing, well, will a 100-year flood happen in Marina Bay? And will it impact me? So another way to break it down. And these are all from the weather.gov website. And of course, there's something called 500-year flood, which is more of a rarity, but could happen. There are models for that. And this one is a 0.2% chance of occurring at any given time. The brown shaded area is what would be likely impacted in Richmond. And again, because of reasons we mentioned, excessive rain, which we are experiencing more and more of. And that in concurrence with tidal movement, but there's again, things to be aware of and to understand.
Still in a good position here.
Yes.
This one would probably cut you off, but potentially cut off some of the routes out of here, but as far as being flooded in your homes, you're still in a you're still in a good zone.
Question is.
As far as preparing for all these things and how to respond, do you get into that at the end, or are we gonna talk about it as we go?
We can talk about it, but I'm gonna share this, which is something that is happening. What I mentioned earlier in terms of the information that we use to publicize and ensure that people are aware of, we do follow the National Weather Service, particularly for this area. These are all forecasts made by the National Weather Service office in Monterey, which covers the Bay Area. So there's a flood watch in effect from 10 p.m. tomorrow, actually today's February 12th, until 10 p.m. Saturday. And a watch, flooding is possible. So it's giving you that head start, that head warning of, be mindful. They do follow certain tiers of notifications. Flood watch is the minimum. Then they have flood advisory, flood warning, flash flood warning. I believe we've had flood advisory and flood warning in the area in recent months. You do hear more atmospheric rivers occurring due to these excessive rain cycles. So there's another round coming. And this is what it's produced in terms of graphics. And they're telling you ahead of time, hey, this is what you should be aware of. For us, is really, letting the community know, be safe watch out during your commute, expect longer commute times, watch out for traffic. There's a popular saying, turn around, don't drown. Flooded streets are sometimes invisible. So going in there and trying to think you can make it through, that's not what you should do. In terms of preparedness for these excessive events, really it's a natural occurrence. I think just understanding what is a drainage situation within your home or within your residential area, that's a good way to mitigate. But again, this is natural occurrence. The city's public works department has a street maintenance storm control team. They become activated every time something like this happens. Why? Because streets in Richmond or throughout Richmond just get flooded really quick. There's isolated floodings all over. Last week we had issues with sewage, getting Viola coordinating that response. It is their responsibility. So we get to work in that matter. And also in terms of this coming rain, they also produce some data in terms of what to expect. These are rain totals for the Bay Area. So expect between 1.50 inches and 3.50 inches of rain. That is a range, nobody really knows, and it's a forecast. But I love the fact that they do have a strong team out there. National Weather Service does a great job in terms of explaining to people the phenomena and the occurrence and the cycles, and just things for you to be aware of. And these are all public from the website. They do socialize this on their social media handles, etc.
They're a really good resource for a lot of different hazards. Red flag, this is one of the first places you'll see red flag warnings come up because they're forecasting winds and humidity levels and temperatures. We utilize NOAA a lot. When the tsunami alert was issued, this is one of the first resources we start going to. Because they have links to other things like buoys in the ocean, sea level, wave heights, swell heights. We used it 2 weeks ago when the Martinez fire happened. And Richard and I were tracking wind currents to make sure that was there any predicted wind shifts, so that might shift the smoke plume towards western Contra Costa County, so we would know. So the NOAA website is an extremely useful tool, and it's open to the public. Sometimes it takes a little while to figure out some of the data and what they're trying to tell you, but it's a great resource to go to kind of know predict what's gonna happen moving forward.
Thank you. I do want to address a question here from Jess. They did ask, if overpasses fail, is there a way out of Marina Bay or best to head to the ferry?
Overpasses.
There's an underpass that goes.
Yeah, but you can still get out
You
and
could-
go
you could
to
go-
Regatta. You still go to Regatta.
Walk the Bay Trail.
Yeah,
Bay Trail or Regatta.
the Bay Trail's underwater is the problem.
The Bay Trail.
Yeah.
You know, when you talk about evacuations, I think the first thing that we want everyone to think about is, what is going on? Should I be evacuating? By evacuation is not always the right answer depending on what the hazard is. Sometimes it puts you in more risk in an unfamiliar area. And so I think that's why we're gonna try to communicate when there's actually a need to risk, because we don't like to tell people to evacuate unless it's absolutely necessary. The best possible place for you to be is in a safe, known location, which is your home, if it is safe there. We're only gonna tell you to evacuate if it is not safe to be in your home. And so, if you don't have any damage in an earthquake, your structure is safe and stable, we don't want to put you out in a place where you could be injured and, people start evacuating. And now we have to figure out to where are we going to send you? Can you even get back into the city of Richmond if you leave? Is it going to be that you're forced to evacuate into El Cerrito or Albany, where we're not aware of what resources might be available to you? So we don't pull that trigger unless it's the best answer for your safety.
I think that was the problem with the tsunami warning. People didn't really know what to do.
We were trying to figure out why they pulled the pin that excessively. That still doesn't make sense to us how that happened.
Okay.
That was one of the most extreme warnings that has ever come out. And we were in the process of starting to order evacuations for a huge portion of the city.
You were coming out this way, right? I heard somebody.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
we sat in a room real quick and mapped out all the zones we were gonna evacuate. And we were about 90 seconds away from pushing them out to everybody. And it was gonna be the largest evacuation process in the history of the city.
Wow.
And go ahead, Karen, yes.
Related to that. We are less impacted by wildfires, although fire could spread here in Marina Bay. We have used Zone Haven as an app that started with El Cerrito Fire, and it's now called Genesis, and it's proprietary. And then, Richard, you mentioned a different app which is more public source. What's it called? It's Fire.
It's Watch Duty.
Watch Duty.
Yes.
So, what is your current position on using one or the other when it addresses evacuations, especially?
They're all linked to each other.
Yeah, let me answer one other thing. What I read was that the tsunami alert was a result of the national Wi-Fi testing system, and it triggers at 7.0, and it did it regardless of whatever the specifics. And so they had it was just automatic.
It was automatic based on the location, the type of fault, and the severity of the earthquake.
Right.
It wasn't based on actual swell data or tsunami, and that's what we started doing as soon as it happened. It went off, our alert went off. We started tracking buoys along the California coast to see, did we see any change? Because we had about an hour and a half from when the earthquake happened to when that tsunami was supposed to hit the Golden Gate. And you should start seeing a progressive phase of the buoys changing heights. Then we should start getting reports in as you come down the coast. And none of that was happening. And that's what was like, are we missing something here? All the agencies, county OES, everybody's talking to each other like, are we missing something? Because we don't see anything that substantiates this level of alert. And we correct, that's what we did read, was that it was actually automatic based on these other factors, not on actual wave. But as far as Zone Haven, or Genesis, CWS, Watch Duty, they all start with Genesis, which has now become integrated into the CWS system. So before there was ever Zone Haven or Genesis, we would give shelter and let's just say shelter in place is where we started with CWS. The true roots of CWS were in industry. It was not meant to be an all risk notification system, it was meant primarily to start as like all the industry that is in the county. So shelter in place, that's where the sirens came from, right? So the siren goes off, that means shelter in place. But we used to have to give geographical boundaries of where we want shelter in place to happen. So we would say from McDonald to Cutting, from from the Parkway to 23rd Street. And then that's how we would designate. What Genesis was able to do is give us polygons or these little quadrants where we could say Richmond 32, 33, 34, 35, we want them on an evac or shelter in place. 29 and 30, we want them on an advisory. It really cleaned up for the incident commanders on the street, how we communicate where we want those notices to be sent. So if someone knows, hey, I'm in zone Richmond 33, I get a alert that says from TWS, it'll reference a Genesis zone. And then that's how it's a more accurate way to determine which neighborhoods or streets or areas are advised on a certain type of action. Watch Duty just copies what they see on Zone Haven and Genesis.
Oh, really?
Yes, they're not their
There were
own.
a lot of people reporting in, and they were tracking the wildfires in the south.
They are, but nobody's evacuating through Watch Duty. Watch Duty, think of Watch Duty as like a media outlet. It's letting you know what's going on somewhere. And it's letting you know who's being evacuated, who's being advised. It's letting you see communication from the incident commander that says, we're at 500 acres and it's, rapid rate of spread. It's something to view and to inform folks. It's not it's not utilized as a method to warn or advise people. That's what CWS, Nixle, and Zone Haven, it's good to know your zone, it's good to be familiar with Zone Haven and Genesis is, but now that it's integrated with CWS, we want CWS and then our Nixle to be what people look at as, that's what's telling you to do something. Everything else is just informing you. Watch Duty is great, I use it for family and property I have up near Lake Oroville. That's how I track fires by my house up there, by my family's house is, and I can see what's going on and there's pictures, but if you were able to see when it was happening real time versus when it posts to Watch Duty, there's a pretty substantial delay. I've had family members who have been evacuated from their zones for wildfires, and it doesn't pop up on Watch Duty for 20, 30 minutes. And so Watch Duty is more of a way to inform you what's going on, kind of stay in the know, but it's not the best method to use to determine when it's time to act.
How fast does Zone Haven respond?
Zone Haven, incident commanders have the ability to log in directly to Zone Haven from our side, that's not public facing. We can move zones into evacuate or advisory or shelter in place from a tablet out in the field. Typically what will happen is we'll call CWS because out in the field, we're saturated with running the incident. We'll contact CWS and they can activate the zones for us right then. We just give them the zones over the phone. So we'll pull up the map, we'll give them the zones, and we'll tell them what the action is we need, and then they push it out.
Have they gotten better? Has Zone Haven improved? I mean,
They've been,
We'll get to the more of evacuation and tell you more about
I
the
mean,
actual software.
Responses,
We've never had problem with zone haven.
Yeah.
well, I heard.
I think
Well, they also have.
people are complaining about CWS.
No, the
They, sorry, Zone Haven, which is now called Genesis Protectors Convention.
Genesis.
And I'll refer you there. It's first of all, it started off with mapping your evacuation zone. Then I also offer notification capability, but we don't rely on that. That's what other jurisdictions or whatever other jurisdictions would like to use them. We're still with CWS, and that's our overriding thing. Have we gotten better? Probably with features, but I probably, wouldn't put my stamp on that, but they do inform on what is your evacuation zone. And that's what I'm gonna show you guys there. Excuse me. And our evacuation is a hot topic, so I'm gonna get there and be able to express a bit more. But before I move on, I do want to address a question here from Margarita. A few minutes ago, it says, is there any evacuation emergency service arrangement with ferry service within Marina Bay? So that's a good question. So just so that you know, there's always transportation. There's a plan that emergency services we work on, and it's for all types of scenarios or specific scenarios. Having an emergency transportation plan is one of them, and actually we work on that alongside the county and other partners, including federal partners, in this case, the Coast Guard, for instance. San Francisco ferries, the Golden Gate ferries. So when something happens, we need to move people because of an emergency. Yes, they will be part of a plan. So that gets activated, and every partner has a role, and that kicks in. So yeah, I mean, you have to think about the worst case scenario. Roads are closed. Imagine also people from San Francisco, they have to come somewhere. Participating partners in that plan from the East Bay would have to play a key role. So it's kind of like a Bay Area type of arrangement, and you can slim it down or narrow it down to the locality. But that is to Margarita's question. That is in the plan.
That's good to know, actually.
Yes. Okay, I will keep going. I see other questions. I'll address them momentarily. So back to rain. Moving on, it's the tsunami hazard area. I did see a question there in terms of tsunami, so we're getting into that. Again, this is for the Department of Conservation. This is a little bit hard to see. I'm going to show another graphic that shows where exactly it is, but this here it's delineated through a brown line. That is what models would indicate a maximum tsunami occurrence. That means extremely high wave, etc. Will they come? And this is not. Let's also clarify, because this was asked even from city staff. Hey, are we expecting these giant wave crashes? I mean, tsunamis are consecutive wave movements, right? They might come, it might take probably another 10 minutes, etc. But this is with that recurrence of wave movement, eventually you will get flooded inland, and that is what the impact would be. I mean, we're also, and depending on where it might hit, obviously the tsunami alert we received was from pretty far north. We might get one further south. It might take less time to get here. But this is again a model based on maximum occurrence, and I'll show you now how that looks in better picture. So again, it's not to visualize it as, it's the big giant wave that's coming, but it's just, inland flooded waters over time. And yes, this area would then be impacted. Okay, again, that's from the Department of Conservation website, and you can zoom out and see wider Richmond area or wider shoreline of San Francisco, what that looks like. See here, Point Richmond also gets impacted. Sandpiper Spit, further down here. So the whole point of responding to a tsunami warning is move inland. Right, move inland and move to higher land. That is what is the basics of people that are in Hawaii, for instance. You know, it's get further inland or get to higher elevation.
How
That is the
deep
number one.
does it get?
Sorry?
How deep does the water get?
That's
I don't think it indicates that.
yeah,
That's
no,
very-
it's
Yeah, it doesn't indicate that.
The maximum,
yeah, it's that's a good question. I mean, it's flooded waters. You know, it could be
Depends on the severity.
half a foot, depends on you know the location. Or the street itself would be able to capture that water, or you know.
well, I got pretty blasé about the whole thing, because I lived in Hawaii and we live in Humboldt. So, I mean, there, we know that they're gonna come crashing against the ocean, but here we're in inland, and I saw the Japan tsunami come creeping in, going out. You know, I said, alert, funny. So I didn't get tight, even though Diane is bugging me. Where are you, Karen?
So we don't have any idea what kind of a magnitude earthquake they're talking about that would cause this kind of a tsunami.
Well, the model says for a maximum occurrence, we're talking probably of 7 and up magnitude. I mean,
It's very interesting to me because
Yeah.
when Berkeley released its MyShake app, the scientists there said they thought that there would be very, very little chance of a tsunami within San Francisco Bay, and this is like very, very different. So
I mean, these are models.
Yeah.
And again, at least for my role, I'll never say to someone, this will never happen. You know,
yeah. Well, now I'm nervous. That's what
So do you remember the in Japan when they had the earthquake and then a tsunami?
Oh, yeah.
Those were the position of the harbor had a lot to do with whether or not you're inundated too.
Yeah.
So like southern facing harbors got inundated, but ones that weren't southern facing didn't get the same impact. So yeah, it's hard to tell. I think they also say that it's depends on the type of fault that has the earthquake. And the motion of how those two faults interact can either, make it a more significant tsunami or none at all. So I don't know. That's half the city. That's a huge, that'd be a huge lift for the whole city to try to get all these areas cleared.
And at one point, somebody said if there is this evacuation, that if you can't get out on the roads because they're backed up to walk, and not everybody can walk, but if you can walk, they recommended going up to like where the CVS is. Is that far enough? I can't tell from the map to get. It doesn't look very.
CVS by Starbucks?
Yeah.
I don't think that was gonna be far enough. That was gonna be knocking on City Hall's door.
Really? Okay.
Does the Department of Conservation provide with this model, likelihood or similar to the flooding, a probability of that happening within the next 500 years, 100 years? Being a responsible agency or department, they have to do something similar, not just the map, but also the probability that it's happening.
It's a good question. I would know what models, how frequent they have those models, or what is their trajectory or projection, sorry. It's a technical question. I would have to find out through that. See a question from Martin, and then Ralph, then Rocky. Go ahead, Martin.
I have a partial answer to the previous question. If you find this map on Cal OES or other places, if you read the long description, they say this map is sort of the combination of several worst case scenarios, and they say maybe once every 975 years.
Okay.
So it's like a 9.1 earthquake and high tide and onshore winds.
Hopefully we're not there.
Yeah, but I've looked at this over the years because I've always lived in tsunami and earthquake zones. But there was a similar map, or a map that covered tsunamis, that the state published in 2009, and it was on their website. Actually, it was on their website in December when the new earthquake happened, the Petrolia earthquake. They took it down. They took the site down for like a week or two to put this new map in. But anyway, the old map from 2009 that was there until at least 2018 had far less area covered in Marina Bay. There was a corner of the beach and a corner, I think part of North Shore that was affected. But you also read the fine print on that one. They say, this is so difficult to predict. We can't give you a probability of this happening. But maybe you should talk to the people who did the old map and say, you know, what's the difference? The second comment is I was looking around at this, and New Zealand has zones. They say, you know, here's it's really bad, evacuate immediately. Then here's another zone that well, maybe think about evacuating, and then you know, they have gradation, just like they have the 100-year flood map and the 500-year flood map. It may not be possible to do that with tsunamis, but I didn't evacuate because I had this information from the past that said, you know, you need a 9.0 somewhere to get a really big tsunami, and my Shake app said it was 7, so I didn't evacuate. That's it.
Thank you, Martin. Ralph.
Going back to the question of how deep is the water, I see on the map 160 feet. It looks like a contour line.
Yeah, that's for the Point Richmond elevation, isn't it?
Yeah, so according to this, I mean, this map, what it depicts is that the water level is 160 feet.
No, I think that's supposed to be the hills that are in the point. That's for reference, right?
Correct.
So
Yeah,
it's not a contour line.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I thought you meant I was looking. No, it's supposed to depict Nickel Knob and the park area up there.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
This is part. Yeah,
160 feet is very.
Here gets pretty high.
That's crazy. Okay.
No, this is the altitude.
That's the sea level altitude versus.
Sorry, yeah, a little bit misleading. Thank you, Ralph.
Okay.
And Rocky. Sorry, let me okay, go ahead, Rocky. Okay. Oh yeah, hang over there. All right, so next slide. Just want to share this picture of impact of tsunami. I know people ask, what will I be impacted? What would it look like? We've seen obviously what happened in Sumatra a few years back, but this was here in Crescent City 2011. I'm sure you probably have seen similar images. Marina Bay has marinas, Richmond shoreline has marinas. This is how things would look in terms of impact. For those who are here again in the back, I did bring some information, some flyers for boaters and what to know about in terms of tsunami. So feel free to grab some of that. It's all information produced by Tsunami Ready agency. So briefly, 3 key bullet points here of what you should know in terms of the impact. So tsunami can travel 20 to 30 miles per hour with waves from 10 to up to 100 feet. Which one of those could impact us? It depends on the magnitude, but this is just a general definition of tsunami and the wave. It can cause flooding and disrupt transportation, power, communications, and water supply. So the critical services to think about. Some of you are aware of backup power, and you guys have those in place. Communications, so they can go out. An antenna could be knocked down, etc. And obviously the water supply. Things to have in mind. It also could happen anywhere on the U.S. coast. The coasts that border the Pacific Ocean have greatest risk. That's because of the current and the wave movement. Although we're not really on the Pacific Ocean, this is a Bay Area, but imagine, we're not that far out from deep water. Again, just 3 critical points to understand what the extent of impacts. Interesting flyer. Here we're getting now into the preparedness aspect. The flyer that I saw online is tsunamizone.org. How to know if a tsunami is coming? So 2 ways. The top area is the official tsunami warnings, and the bottom here is natural tsunami warning signs. So official is you get a wireless emergency alert like you received December 5th.
That's the WIA.
That is a WIA. Exactly. And that will be issued by state authority. The city of Richmond does not issue WIA. We are not authorized for that. You will get a follow-up or a backup nixle, like if you subscribed, you did on December 5th. You might hear over radio by official agencies, outdoor sirens, if that is activated. The sirens for Richmond are specifically for hazmat situations, and also online TV. The bottom part here is the natural signs. It's you see sunrise or fall of the ocean. You hear a loud roar from the ocean, or feel a strong or long earthquake. That is the again a graphic of what to do. Just head to higher ground or head inland. Rocky, I'm gonna give you the I'm gonna unmute you again. 1 second. I think Rocky had a question from earlier.
Richard, when do the Richmond sirens go off? For what reasons?
So they will go off for level 2, eventually level 3.
Of what?
Level 3 of the
Hazard?
actual, the level of hazardous release.
But not for earthquakes or tsunamis or.
So now, the siren system was specifically designed for industrial emergencies.
Chevron.
So chemical releases, smoke from a fire, that's from the chemical plant. And I think that's what people have always asked, can we use it for other, we get that question, like, can we use it for other risks? And the problem is that the siren system has been around for almost 20 years. And for 20 years, the sirens, people are told it means what? Shelter in place. When you hear the siren, go inside, shut your windows, turn on your radio, check your phone. You're gonna get further direction, but shelter in place. We've been programmed that that's what it means. And to use it for other risks, where we don't want people to shelter, we want people to evacuate, is problematic. And so that's why, we see like Berkeley is trying what they call that LRAD system for wildfire evacuations. It has to be a different tone, it has to be a different sound, because it's hard to unprogram 20 years of being told, when you hear this, do this, right? And so, and like I said, when earlier, the CWS system and the siren system was never meant, when it was thought of after the oleum fire, actually it was after the chemtrade fire, was when that really started to actually take effect. It was never meant to be an all risk system. It was meant to be specific for industry and for chemicals and for those types of plumes. And so it's evolved so much, the hazards that we have to worry about have evolved so much. Now we have to look at, well, how do we get this mass notification out where they don't confuse it with the sirens?
I would say I disagree with that premise that 20 years, I mean, it's actually longer than that, but a lot of you have moved here that know nothing about our sirens. And then we can re-educate, and we can use things like magnets, which they've used before, to say this is a broader usage. Now, it wouldn't be something that's ongoing, but it'd be an emergency where you would go inside, close up and turn on your radio or whatever, but I don't think we should just assume because Chevron and the other industries paid for this. I'm not sure they still pay for the sirens or not, but they should not say, oh, that's it.
Chevron doesn't say that. It's
Okay.
ran by the sheriff's department.
Well,
and there's
Sheriff's Department.
40 sirens countywide. So we're not just talking about a system where we educate just Richmond folks, it's.
I
countywide.
disagree. In Hawaii and on Humboldt, other areas along the California coast, they use the sirens for
For tsunamis.
other things.
Well, I know Hawaii, they use it for tsunami.
Yeah. So.
So
we can
when the
re-educate-
siren goes off in Hawaii, people have been trained to go to higher ground, correct?
We can re-educate the Richmond and West County community to see a more comprehensive application because the people have moved here and the CWS sirens are older than 20 years. But there are a lot of people that have died or turned over and we can re-educate and we've got ways to re-educate.
I guess my point is that if we want to have a alerting system that way, it has to be independent of CWS. Because CWS is ran by the county sheriff's department and the OES, and it's bigger than just the city of Richmond. So that's why we would have to have our own
Just like
system.
Berkeley does.
Like Berkeley does, we'd have to fund our own system where we're in control of being able to how we want to implement it. Because right now, we also, this same siren system is in Antioch and Bay Point and Martinez
All right.
and Rodeo. And so that's the problem, is not having the control for us to say we want to use it for something else.
All right.
That was, I'm not against trying something new. It's, we have to be able to probably do it within our own jurisdiction, so we control what it means and the education aspect and all of that to it.
Yeah, my concern is that the phone system and these other things do not reach as many people as a siren would, which can handle people who are asleep or deaf, all kinds of things. A much more urgent motivation, actuation than the CWS cell phone texting and all that stuff.
Yeah, we have things we have to think about even on-house. How do they know what
Right.
to do, right? And so that is a concern. What we have to make sure is that when you hear whatever the sound is, everybody, what can't be up for debate is, what does it mean? So when there's a sound, if it sounds like a siren for chemical releases and it's a warble for wildfire, it has to be that no matter what the sound is, people have to know exactly what their next action is. And that's the whole point of mass alerting like that, is there's no confusion. You have to know and be educated. When you hear this sound, do this action. And that's what part of education program, if we have our own system, we would have to make sure we do.
And doesn't the CWS also make sounds from your phone? I mean, it will alarm.
So that's what I was pointing out, is the WIA system, the wireless
the
emergency
WIA.
alert.
Right,
Nobody here signed up for tsunami warnings, right? But we all got it on
Right.
our phone.
right,
WIA is not rely on signing up.
right.
WIA is, they have access to cell towers, and anybody that's pinging off that cell tower gets that message. CWS has that capability. In a level 3, they can activate the WIA and push out to, whether you signed up for CWS or not, they can push out evacuate or a
Does it have a
shelter.
loud noise is the question.
The
Does
That
it?
is, I
does
think
it-
I think the noise is what's set up, by the actual manufacturer. It's like the Amber Alert. It's
Yeah.
that type of.
Yeah.
Well, then they light you up.
Well,
It's designed
Android
for-
or a iPhone.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
do they make, I've never heard any loud noise on my phone. I've noticed,
Yeah.
you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the earthquakes and the tsunami, and then for Amber Alerts, they have, it triggers it. I've been told that that's based on, that's within the phone.
Yeah.
And so someone who has an old flip phone might not have
No,
that same
right,
sound, but a smart device.
Yeah.
They're all supposed to make that same sound when it's a WIA activation, because that's a very specific activation. And you have to have a license to even access
Right.
that. There's a bunch of regulations that come with that, and that's why the county has it, because they have to have 24-hour staffing on that system.
Excuse me, can you finish the presentation?
Yes,
And
thank
ask
you.
questions?
Thank you. I was gonna say, we're down to, fortunately, our last 10 minutes. And this deserves much more time. Thank you. So I will, and Rocky, I'll leave your question for the end if you don't mind. Okay, we talked about that. This is what I have in the back there. It's just tsunami flyers for boaters. Again, it's very rare. Tsunami alerts, just for your awareness, that is how the National Weather Service has it. It's a 4-tier approach. This alert levels on the left, in the middle is the action they need to take, and the hazard on the right. So we all receive the warning. That means get to high ground or inland immediately, and then danger, a tsunami is imminent. That's what they pushed. They went extreme. Are they evaluating? You know, the whole protocols, yes, they are. Will likely not be the same if it happens again. But please become familiarized with those. And again, these are all available on the National Weather Service website.
So jumping to warning right away is not what's gonna happen the next time out. Is that what's gonna happen?
Well,
It's gonna be maybe watch or advisory?
No. It's not that it won't happen again, but I mean, given what occurred, it hit somewhere where the subduction line did not really generate much power.
Okay.
But it could be in a different point where it could generate that, and that's what they're working on, trying to ensure that those trigger points in the region will get it depending on what's happening. But yes, it's important to become familiarized with that. Okay, I'm gonna move forward here. We're going back. Oops, sorry. Going back. There you go. Okay, this takes us to evacuation zones. Again, for those of you who are not aware, this is already mapped out. So RCH is the 3-letter wording that was, was decided upon by local authorities, fire department, law enforcement to say that's what's going to be Richmond. Contra Costa County, any unincorporated area, they have CCC. You'll see later in the next graphic. San Pablo, I think, is SPA. San Rafael, depending on the jurisdiction. But you see here, Marina Bay, it might actually be touched upon 3 evacuation zones. Okay, so become familiarized with them, and how can you know which evacuation zone you're part of? Well, CWS Alerts, so the county's website. If you go to cwsalerts.com/know your zone, it'll take you to their website where you can again key in your address, and it'll pop in this. So I typed in 1 Shoreline Court, and it showed me this. I did this yesterday, but it showed me this. It gave me the status at the moment, and it delineates the evacuation zone. Okay. This is the evacuation zone that we will rely on to make decisions as well. Do we need to evacuate that zone, that zone, that zone? That's where you're gonna go. See here, that's El Cerrito. That's their own specific. Okay. And I wanted to show this. Chief, you mentioned that briefly. This is how things looked for us December 5th. How we were minutes away from pulling the trigger. Again, because it was a major warning and really took people by surprise that we were going to do our role, our job, our responsibility of evacuating folks. So we're looking at, doing a major operation. Have we not received that tsunami warning has been canceled?
Yeah.
We would have been pretty busy out here.
I say we were close. I mean, we had just hung up on the account with CWS.
Yeah.
Giving them all of these zones, and they said, well, that's a lot of zones. It's gonna take a second to get those out. If it wasn't for that delay, it would have been pushed out.
Yeah.
Like, we had already given those zones, and we're starting to come up with a plan and called police in to start working on shutting down intersections to do one-way traffic. So like, their wheels were in motion, and thank goodness it got canceled when it did, because it would have been a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Freddie and I were about to go get our bullhorns out and start going around the neighborhood and telling people to get out. And then we needed people to get in cars and do carpooling, because otherwise there'd be too many cars on the road.
It's a major operation, especially when it's.
Where were you going to send
no
people if you activated your alert?
We were not going to give people a collection point because of the size. There's no facility that could have held this many people. the directions were gonna be to go inland and get to higher ground if you're in the zone. Because
Just,
we wouldn't know, there's so little information that, and there's no place that has capacity for that many people. So the original thought was to tell people to get inland and higher ground. And then we would follow up with messaging about the various collection points or sheltering that once we establish that, people can go to get help, assistance, information. But the scale of this was so huge that we felt like we can't even provide collection point data or locations.
The message is gonna be, please move inland.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, there's evacuation planning involved, and that served us as an exercise, and we have to go deeper into the details. Thinking about schools, thinking about elders, thinking about all sorts of population characteristics. We spoke about, or people mentioned about evacuation routes. So this is a draft evacuation route model that will be incorporated in our upcoming update of the city's general plan 2030. Within the general plan, there are several sections. One of them is the public safety and noise element. And that by state mandate, we have to address evacuation matters and concerns. So this here is what is likely to be delineated evacuation routes, the main ones. What we as a city will be doing is going deeper in and offering local jurisdiction, local neighborhoods, which is what people want to see. What is, and again, how to evacuate is, you need to understand and know ahead of time what is your way out. But it's good to know what would be the potential main avenues and main streets. For instance, Marina Bay Parkway, which doesn't show here. So we'll try to highlight those secondary streets that are not shown here. But in general, something big happened. What you want is to ensure, obviously, the interstates being the main evacuation routes. Richmond Parkway on the side, Carlson Boulevard, and of course, these main arteries inside.
And at the bottom there is your ferry. There are
Yes.
people that talked about the red line in the water.
Yeah.
That's the potential ferry collection point and departure point.
Yes.
So
If needed,
Except for tonight.
except for tonight, yeah, I don't think you want to get into those. That would be more earthquake, or if you cut off, due to collapse, things like that.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of Marina Bay neighborhood preparedness, I just want to highlight the great job Diane and Gary, Karen, Jay, you guys have really a solid group. You guys have an emergency preparedness committee. I developed excellent resources. I would just encourage those that are online from the community and those that are here to just, get organized and get involved. And also for others who might be joining us from outside this neighborhood to also follow that suit. I mean, it's important to see, especially for me, it's kind of like that last mile of organized planning that really is important. We do our job. It's not that we detach the last mile, but look, it's to me, it's satisfying to know that there's that level of work, detailed work involved. Marina Bay CERT has been around for some time, and take part in that if that is something that interests you. CERT stands for Community Emergency Response Team. There is an academy that we call an academy that's starting in March. We do have information on that on our website. We're already on a wait list because people do look forward to that. But if you send an email, you might be able to get in. Or if not, you can try other jurisdictions. San Pablo also has a CERT academy going on. And as I mentioned, emergency radio communication is also done here at neighborhood level. I do know that this premise here has emergency communications antenna. I mean, the level of organization again is impressive. So get involved, understand what's being done, and that really helps understand preparedness, and it really gets you more on the ready side compared to the what happened side. More things, I'm just staying informed, and I'm gonna end it shortly. The community warning system, which we talked about, it's really an all hazards emergency alert system. You can subscribe to it, but also remember through AWEA, which is what they're authorized to do, they can pin specific people during specific emergencies. So that fire that you probably read about that happened in Martinez, the people around there that were asked to shelter in place, they received AWEA alert as well. The graphics on the right side is something I also wanted to share with you guys. It's something that has been enabled since January 15th by the community warning system. And it gives you the ability to opt in to receive notifications of when certain hazmat activity is going on. Specifically, flaring that lasts longer than 20 minutes. That has been a concern for the community. There has been, this is based on consultation and coordination with industry, and of course, interest from the community through elected officials. So that was a result of that. You can either receive text messages or emails, and that is a way to do it. Just going to cchealth.org. It's all part of the county health effort.
Real quick on that one, that's the easiest way is just to text CC Health, all one, no space. So that 21423.
Yes.
And it instantly signs you up. You will get notifications for all level ones in the county though. So Martinez, Phillips 66, Chevron. It's completely separate from CWS, but it is operated by CWS, the agency, the sheriff's department. But it is separate from CWS because it doesn't require community action. It's a completely different sign up. So the one on the left is signing up for the full CWS level 2s and 3s. On the right is more informational. You want to know, hey, the Chevron flare is going off. I want to know when they do that. The one on the right is the one you would want to make sure you sign up for.
And it's 21423?
Yes, so you text CC Health to 21423.
Instantly, it'll get back to you and it'll say you've been signed up for CC Health. To me, that's how I did it. It's way easier than going online or email. I just send the text.
And it has been working.
Yeah.
Did it already?
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you.
I'm sorry, how do I sign up for the one on the left?
Right, so here you go to CWS alerts, and I have the link
Okay.
down the road, yes. Okay, and this is what we manage. It's our city's Nixle, which is community information on emergencies and alerts, but also we use it as a backup to, a need for urgent action. That's always been the same. We text your zip code where you live to 888-777. And the good thing is that you can sign up to receive Nixle alert from any other local jurisdiction if they use it. If you have a relative in another state, for instance, you can get that if their public safety agency participates in that. And we're trying to do something a little bit different with Nixle down the line, so you'll hear more about that, just specifically for the city. And just want to end it with this. This is listoscalifornia.org website. I love how they just summarize it in 5 steps, which are really really doable. So, 5 steps to be ready. 5 steps to preparedness is number 1, signing up for alerts. Number 2, make a plan. Well, what kind of plan? Well, what's going to happen? Any given time. If your kids are in school, if you're out of work, if you're, just what is your plan? Where are you going to go? Who are you going to inform or call? That is the type of plan. Where are you going to meet? 3rd step is pack a go bag. Again, if you need to leave the house or you need to be self-sustainable for some time, get into the practice of having those backup items. Make a stay box. And this is the concept of, well, if you don't need to go anywhere, but you need to stay in your house. Just remember how we stayed in home during COVID. The same type of topic. When you have to stay indoors for quite a bit of time, we'll ensure also that you have that sort of preparedness. And number 5 is simply help others. But not just help others, first understand who your neighbors are. Who lives above you, who needs more help. if you need help, do your neighbors know that? Just
If you're
trying to make
disabled
that-
and you have to evacuate, knowing your neighbors that might need help, that you can relay to us to come and get them. That's a big question in wildfire evacuations. What if my neighbor is non-ambulatory? You know, and so the more people that know someone needs help, the more people that might be able to get in contact with us or flag us down so we can get them out. But it's good to make sure you kind of stay as a group or as a community aware of who needs more assistance than others.
Right. And these are some of the resources that I shared from the previous graphics. I'll share this separately to you all. Probably coordinate with Diane, with the participants. I can send that via
The people
email.
that signed up in person, I don't have
Okay.
emails for though,
Okay.
so.
That was the CWSalerts.com is the one that you were.
Number
looking for.
4 here, cwsalerts.com. That's where you go to sign up.
There's a register now button. It's a black button once you get to that webpage.
Yep.
And once you click on that, it goes to this whole sign up. So you can do emails, cell phones, all the methods you would like to be notified by.
And I'll leave it open probably 1 or 2 minutes for last comments or questions. Or Rocky, sorry, Rocky, I can get back to you with your comments. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Rocky.
Do you hear me now?
Yes, we do. Go ahead.
First of all, a big shout out to Marina Bay HOA from Brickyard Cove, Brickyard Landing specifically for this meeting. And Chief, very nice to see you for the first time and hear you talk. And Richard, you're a fantastic representative of the city. I just want to reiterate how important all these points are. And Chief and Richard, I'd like to meet with you personally and talk to you about some of these other comments. I'm not going to waste anybody's time, but there are some really important technologies out there that can help us, both on earthquakes, fire following earthquakes, and also the communication. Genesis actually has a system that looks really interesting for communication. But anyway, that's it. And also on tsunamis, we're fortunate. We do not have a subduction zone near the bay, Northern California, and of course in Japan. But we're very fortunate about that. So anyway, that's it from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocky. I will,
Plates that.
Lena, I see your hand up. Go ahead.
They go under each other. You push the button. Let's do
Oh,
this.
hey, hi, everyone. Thank you. I was just asking if you could go back one panel so that I can screenshot those contact information, please.
Sure,
Thank you.
no problem. And from the room, any last comments? Jay?
Yeah, Karen and I have been at this a long time. And I'd say the last item that you had up there, the 5 things you should do, that's the most important thing, right there. That's the important thing. So just understand if we have major earthquake, we lose utilities, okay, utility company's not gonna come fix it right away, okay? You're not gonna have sewage, you're not gonna have water. Let's just hope we don't have a fire because we're not gonna be able to put it out. There won't be water pressure. East Bay Water says it's gonna have thousands of breaks. So, you need to be able to get through 5 days. You need 2 gallons of water per person a day. You need a little propane, butane cook stove that you can cook on, okay? Some dry food, stored away. Canned food. A camper toilet, which is nothing more than a 5-gallon bucket with you go down to REI and they got a toilet ring that goes around that seat, and you put the plastic bag in it. So if you have a toilet, if you have water, if you have flashlights and you have good batteries, backup batteries, and you can cook for 5 days. By 5 days, East Bay Water will have set up distribution point for water. The city will have sorted things out as to whether you should stay or you should go. And but they've made a good point here today. There are just times where everybody can't evacuate. So if you can stay here, you know, be aware of the situation. If you can stay here, then stay here. Because you don't want to get on the road and you're jammed there. Look at all these people down in Florida and the South. You know, where they're on the road for hours and hours because they waited too long. Okay, so be alert of the surrounding, be alert of what's going on. And be able to handle yourself for 5 days, and then once you've got yourself taken care of, go look on your neighbors, go take care of them. Okay?
And Jay, we also want to, give credit to all of our building captains because, we have our emergency communications and preparedness team, which we have about 6 people on right now. Some of them are here. And then there's all the building captains, and we all work together to be able to go through the process. And Karen has taught us all about how to do, a rapid damage assessment if we're, going to have this kind of issue. And then we'll know how to handle it with the help of everybody. So anybody who wants to join us, we're so happy to have you join us.
And we meet the second Tuesday?
First Tuesday,
First Tuesday at
6 o'clock,
in here.
right here.
Okay, I'll be back.
I just want to put in perspective
Yeah.
too, the importance of being able to take care of yourselves for a little while.
Mhm.
The entire city, there's 25 firefighters on duty every day.
Right.
And it's not that we don't want to come or that we're not going to, it's gonna be that in the worst case scenario, there's not enough of us to come to go around. And we will also be dealing potentially with our own structural collapse in some of our fire stations, injuries. And so that's why it's so important for the communities to organize is it might. Worst case scenario, we might not be able to get here right away, like you're used to us coming in 4 minutes when you pick up 911. And so, we'll be going around the city doing windshield assessments, damage assessments, identifying locations before we commit in a worst case earthquake. So, it's a form of triage we have to end up doing in a big event. And so that's why it's so important that everybody can take care of themselves and take care of each other for that initial period till we can kind of get our bearings about what's going on and where do we need to send resources and order resources.
And we talked about fires and not big fires, but small fires. We do have fire extinguishers everywhere. And one of the best things I learned in the CERT was actually practicing how to use that fire extinguisher because I had never used one before. But opening up the thing was the hardest thing, just getting that. Yes.
What's your
Karen,
website?
sorry.
What's your website you said for the CERT class?
It's our City of Richmond website,
And
and then it's Office of Emergency Services.
Fire department, then Office of Emergency Services.
We just need to find out when the next training is. I mean, I've taken training and a few other people have, but more people, I took it in San Pablo, right, which was excellent, really good instructor.
Ours is starting March 13th.
13 March. So,
But you said it was full, right?
It's on a wait list. You can email Richmond CERT Richmond at gmail.com. We have a group of CERT graduate volunteers that are supporting and with the whole enrollment process. So you would hear from them on the availability.
We always tend to have folks that kind of drop out last minute, right? So sometimes they're last minute vacancies.
So I wanted to thank.
Yes, go ahead, Karen, and then.
No, go ahead, questions. I just wanted to.
Anyone?
Just one question. Thanks for covering all the natural disasters potentially. Is there a way to prepare ourselves for the man-made disasters? In case there are 2 things that are on my mind, refinery and the Port of Richmond. And the cases, something that happened with Fukushima in Japan after the earthquake, and something that happened in Lebanon, the explosion.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So do we need to know more? How can we facilitate communications? Because you're representing the city and you have direct connection to these enterprises. Do we need to have in our houses something in addition to what we already have to prepare for something that may be an disaster?
Well, the easy one is the port.
Yeah.
Because as of right now, the port's in the revitalization stage, and so the industry that is at the port, we haven't identified anything that's at that level of risk, like the nuclear plant or the the explosion that happened in Lebanon. Everything over in the port right now kind of falls under the normal business in the city as far as industry. There's the terminal for petroleum products that's there. You have National Gypsum bringing in, gypsum rock, making their products. The cars are coming in. So as of right now, there isn't necessarily anything that's a higher risk than is normally in the city. I think as the port is developed and new business is brought into the port, that's something we're gonna have to keep track of. And the port director, I think he's in the process of doing, updating, the emergency plan that's specific to the port. And so Charles will interface with us as that plan is developed. Because that's kind of a unique plan that someone from the port would have to do, with just a little bit of input from us and, and from Richard. As far as industry and refinery, the signups we talked about, the notifications, that's the first step, because you can't take any action if you don't even know. And so that's the important part, is knowing that, where your shelter in place is going to be, making sure you're in a building that is sufficient for sheltering in place, being able to know how to shut down your HVAC systems, having supplies. The good thing for you, there's winds can change all the time. The prevailing winds, if there's an incident at Chevron, tend to take it right over the center of town, over to the hills. I've had the unfortunate privilege of being at the last major fires at Chevron, 2014 to 2012. Those had the prevailing winds, which kind of took it towards the El Cerrito hills. Doesn't mean it can't come this way. But just being aware, the CWS system is where it's going to be the best. And if people can get out before they have to shelter in place, it's better, because once it happens, you look at Martinez, that was very thick smoke. Now it's coming out that there's a lot more toxins in that smoke than they originally thought. And thank God it didn't go into Martinez and went kind of more out to the marshland, but it did impact some of the homes. But getting out before you can do that is a lot better than being stuck in there in your house. But the signups are the main thing, because that's what's going to dictate how soon you can take action and get out or shelter in place. There's also if you look at there's a fence line monitoring that you have access to. I think we can get that link for you.
Yeah, that's something that probably would put on here, but Chevron has its own fence line monitoring. They do monitor air quality within their premise in coordination with the Bay Area
air quality
management district.
And then when they have large incidents or large unusual flaring, we as a hazmat team will do independent air monitoring just to validate that it's correct. So if there was something that wasn't incorrect, or we found something different, one of the first places we would push that out on is in our Nixle platform. Is letting folks know that, there's no hazard to the community. So I know people want some redundancy. I know there's not always, you're not sure what is rooted in the industry or what's from public, and there's trust issues sometimes. So we try to validate all the information that we can when it's appropriate, like I said.
So I wanted to say a few things. Jay and I have been CERT members since 2008. I took over the leadership of Marina Bay CERT in 2012. And seen a lot of cyclical changes. I'd say the most important thing in all this is personal leadership, the people at the top who's willing to step forward and show their humanness and also show their quality. And you two gentlemen tonight are representative of the city. I really appreciate the new chief and Richard, we've seen turnover of a lot of staffing, okay? And we won't even talk about that. The same with Marina Bay. There are 13 HOAs, and my first vision was that we could organize by HOAs much more easily than Point Richmond or Richmond Annex or whatever. And it's been the case. We've had turnover, people died, they moved away, but it's been guys like Diane and her team at the shores, Wendy and the other guys at Marina Bay condos that have reconstructed after we lost Georgia. Marty of Breakers he's been more of a big picture guy and has helped us all. We only have right now we have three strong, I would say three strong HOAs out of 13. People coming in. It's a lot of effort to organize and get people to pay attention, but when these HOAs decide, someone steps forward and says, I'll partner with somebody and we'll build up this development. That happens, and I really appreciate the current leadership we have, and they usually become cert trained so they can lead the team. Our focus, Jay and I, has been on radio communication for the last 6 years, 7 years, because we felt that was a quick way to communicate and build within each HOA as well as between the HOAs, and to talk to across neighborhoods and talk to the city. So it's a really hard thing to do, but we've made progress. The next level below that, as I see it, is rapid damage assessments. Take over the windshield work that your 25 or per shift staff would do. So the communities learn how to do rapid damage assessment in their HOAs, and then have some structure created by you, the OES, to help us all, because CERT should include rapid damage assessment more than traffic management and other things. So the first thing was radio communication. The second is rapid damage assessment. And the third very critical thing that you can emphasize is the incident command system, so that we all know our place and who's in charge and a system in place. So you can be sure to emphasize these things in CERT. We've got the radio thing handled, but the damage assessment protocol and the incident command system training for all of us. And this didn't matter whether it was an old neighborhood like Port Richmond or North and East. All of us need that training to run through you, and that would be appreciated.
Thank you, Karen. And that's what is referred to as continued education after you graduate from CERT. They're supposed to have certain things in place. So we're trying to organize those. I know there's a solid network of ham radios and GMR, sorry. But we need to do more, because it's kind of like a catch and release type of approach. You want to do a catch and retain of certs. Retain, kind of like let it spin on its own, but make it more sustainable and actually impactful. So thank you for that. I'll make note.
And LISTOS is very important.
And LISTOS, which is a lesser of CERT
Light
approach, but it's CERT light. Yes.
Did you have a question? I saw your hand up.
I was just gonna say quickly, if the cell towers are down, what do we do? Do we turn on just like a regular radio? I mean.
Yeah, just CWS, well, for notification.
We have a radio team here. and
That's what I don't even know what that is.
So it's part of our emergency preparedness group, and we also have all the building captains. We have, in fact, this next Sunday at 4 in the afternoon, we're gonna meet here. If you're interested, meet here. We have a lot of people, about 12 or 13 that have radios, GMRS or FRS walkie-talkies or ham. And we planned to be able to communicate via the building captains or whoever are going to be, if there's an emergency, you go to your kiosk, your mail kiosk. And the mail kiosk is where we can communicate from. So your people from your building captains could be there talking to us here. We can be talking to other neighborhoods or to whomever.
So we're putting one of these in our EOC. So eventually there will be a connection in the large scale when we have to activate the EOC. A wet method to communicate with the ham radio operators, because right now the system is made for our system, which is not the same frequencies.
Okay, got it.
I will end it for the attendees.
Yes. Thank you so much for coming, Richard.
Thank you.
Yes.